What if I told you that your stress response could be directly fueling your low back pain, and that it's not just about lifting heavy things or moving the wrong way, but that your very thoughts and emotions could be turning up the volume on your pain? In this episode, I'm putting on my physiotherapist and my yoga therapist hats to explain how your brain's threat detector, what I call your protectometer, links stress and pain. And most importantly, how yoga can become one of the most powerful tools you have to calm this system, to process stored stress and reclaim safety in your body. Welcome to the Empowered Yogi Podcast, where movement and neuroscience meets yoga and spirituality. I'm Cathy Aganoff, physiotherapist and yoga teacher with over 20 years of experience helping yoga lovers overcome injuries and reclaim their yoga practice and lifestyle. I'm here to share with you my most valuable teaching to help you get off that recurring injury hamster wheel and get back to thriving on the mat. Let me ask you this. Have you ever noticed that your back pain seems to worsen when you're stressed out, even if you haven't done anything physically demanding? Maybe you've been rushing to make a deadline, had an argument with someone you love, or simply felt overwhelmed, and suddenly your low back tightens up, leaving you wondering what just happened. That used to be me back in 2015 during the most emotionally stressful time in my life, the breakup of my long-term relationship. I also experienced chronic low back pain in that year. And not surprisingly, the year of my biggest heartbreak and emotional upheaval, that was also the year my low back was the most painful. Here's the truth. Stress is one of the biggest culprits behind many chronic health conditions. And when it comes to pain, your brain has a built-in threat detector. I call it your protectometer. I believe this term was originally coined by neuroscientist and physio Lorimer Moseley, who is a well-known researcher in the area of pain from the same university I studied at and was one of my lecturers back in the day. But this protectometer is not a single anatomical brain part. It's a term that describes the process for how different regions of the brain work together to detect threats. The protectometer doesn't just register physical threats like lifting your toddler or grandkids and straining your back. It also registers your thoughts and emotions as potential threats. So whether you're worrying about your back, stressing about work, or rushing to appointments, your protectometer can amplify your pain signals as a way to make you pay attention. Pain in this context is less about damage and more about perceived danger. When I went through my breakup, yoga philosophy would say that my pain was connected to my root chakra, the energy center tied to safety, security, and belonging. I felt like I'd lost my home, my foundation, and that survival stress got trapped in my low back and hips. Yoga philosophy explains it as stuck energy. Neuroscience explains it as an overactive threat detection system. But both perspectives agree stress lives in the body if it isn't processed and released. And here's something important. It doesn't always take a huge trauma. Sometimes it's the accumulation of little t traumas, being criticized as a child, feeling rejected, not feeling safe to fully express yourself. Over time, this survival stress builds up like emotional debris. Think of it like your computer hard drive. If you never delete old files or organize your downloads, your system clogs with junk. Eventually, it slows down, glitches, and throws error messages. Chronic pain is one of those error messages. So we have to process and release stress. Other animals in the animal kingdom do this much better than we do. You can probably picture a duck or a deer in the wild escaping a predator. They literally do a Taylor Swift in response to the haters and shake it off. They discharge the stress hormones and muscular tension from their fight or flight response, allowing their nervous system to reset and return to a calm state without developing chronic stress. The thing that I think happens so often is that our modern lifestyle, and this was me too, this hectic pace that we live our lives in, conditions us to disconnect from our body so much that we don't even realize that we're carrying all this heaviness and fatigue and emotional debris in our bodies. And because we have been conditioned by these emotions over time, we start to confuse them as just being us. We don't recognize those emotions as like hitchhikers that have hijacked our nervous system temporarily, and then they move on. Not that anyone does this anymore, kind of seems like an insane thing to do, but it's like picking up an annoying hitchhiker. And rather than dropping them off in the next town, we just stuff them in the boot and forget that they're there. Every now and then they might yell out and thump the boot and make the ride uncomfortable. That analogy felt a little creepy. I don't know how my brain came up with that one. Sorry for the creepy serial killer vibes. But all this is to say, if we don't have a skillful practice for processing and discharging our stress, this emotion, this energy in motion gets stuck and ends up being stored in the body's tissues. Now, here's the kicker. After about 3 months of ongoing pain, your brain starts to memorize pain, just like learning a piano piece or flowing through sun salutations without thinking. Your brain creates a pain map. So even if the original tissue damage has healed, your brain keeps firing off the pain signal because it's learned to. So you see, that's why so many people struggle with boom and bust cycles of stress. Just like pain, it becomes a learnt and practiced neural pathway. I think we all fall into this trap sometimes, maybe you too, where you think, I just need to cut out my stress. Like, I just need to do less. If I stop overcommitting to things, everything will be much better. That's why I'm always stressed. I'm just doing too much. And it's tempting to fall on this strategy as a fix for your chronic stress. And now, if you've been listening to this podcast so far, or you've followed me on social media, you know that this is my thing. My message is all about moving beyond Band-Aid solutions to healing. This is the Empowered Yogi Podcast, not the Pampered Yogi Podcast. And that's really what this is. Reducing your stress by cutting things from your to-do list might make you feel less stressed. And by all means, do that. Anything that reduces your stress is a really good thing. And often you do need to do that when you reach a certain threshold of stress and overwhelm. But what I'm saying is that doing this isn't really addressing the root cause issue. It's just putting a Band-Aid over it. One of my favorite yoga quotes that speaks to this teaching is to live like the lotus at home in the muddy water, which means that through established practice of yoga, we can become so resilient and healthy in our nervous system that no matter what's going on outside, no matter what conditions you are facing in your life, back pain, kids not listening and running amok, work deadlines looming, things are generally not going to plan. Despite all of these challenges, you are good. You just flow. That doesn't mean that you don't feel your feelings and get upset or angry, but you have a healthy processing mechanism to process and release all of that fight-flight energy. That's why we need to retrain the nervous system. And there's two main approaches to this. Bottom up, which is using the body to calm the brain, and top down, using the mind to calm the body. Both are essential, And both these strategies are being practiced every time we come to the mat to do yoga. So that's good news. Bottom up includes things like strength training and gentle rhythmical movement and breath work. Strengthening your low back and your core is like reinforcing the foundation of a house. Once the base is rock solid, your brain gets undeniable proof that the structure can handle more weight. Or think of it like presenting evidence in court. The jury is your nervous system, and once it sees the evidence, it rules in favor of safety and movement. But it's not just about strength, it's also about gentle, soothing movement. Movements like cat-cow send rhythmical signals of safety to the nervous system. It's like rocking a baby to sleep, reminding the brain that movement can be soothing, not dangerous. Top down starts with our thoughts. And the first step is simply gratitude for your nervous system. Because when you beat yourself up for reacting to things, you're like someone yelling at a smoke alarm for going off. It's only doing its job. Instead, thank it and then gently reassure it that the kitchen isn't on fire. When you meet your nervous system with gratitude, you soften resistance. And that makes space for affirmations and new beliefs about your safety to land. But here's the key. You can't just repeat affirmations in a rushed, logical state. You need to slow down your brainwaves. It's like waiting for a drawbridge to lower. You can't cross over into the garden of your subconscious until the bridge comes all the way down. That's why I use practices like breathwork, pranayama, meditation, and something I call mind movies, these short visual affirmations designed to bypass the logical brain and plant new seeds of belief where they can actually grow. So here's the bigger picture. As yogis, we already have the tools. Every time you meet discomfort on the mat with patience, compassion, and presence, you're building resilience. You're training your nervous system not to disconnect, but to stay with sensation and allow stress to be processed. This is how stored stress gets metabolized instead of hoarded. Over time, as your system acclimates, you start to feel safer in your body. And that sense of safety is what allows your protectometer to dial down your pain. And safety is the medicine. So I hope you're seeing here that the experience of safety has many contexts. Part of healing my chronic back pain involved coming face to face with some of my most wounded parts and learning to be with them with compassion and sending them the love that they needed but perhaps didn't receive in those moments when they were wounded. One of these contexts of training my nervous system to feel safe was around a fear of exposure. This often comes from excessive criticism and judgment and feelings of shame during childhood that makes you feel unsafe to speak up and express your true self. And I've reflected on this many times. The call to teach yoga, and I'm starting to see now also another layer of this, is the call to start a podcast, is tied up with this pull to heal that part, to heal my own fear of exposure. Despite all of my experiences, I think one thing that I'm really proud of myself for is that although I do feel all of these feelings of self-doubt and imposter syndrome, I've never let them stop me from following a deeper calling. My curiosity about what's possible has always won out over my self-doubt. And so I share this with you to hopefully show you that this is not my safe space to be this open. And I'm not usually the type to be an oversharer. If you've attended my yoga classes in the studio or online, you may have noticed this about me. I'm usually more focused on my students and what they are doing and what they're going through. I'd like to say it's because I'm being selfless and giving, But if I'm totally honest, subconsciously, I think my nervous system feels safer that way because sharing about myself may trigger my fear of exposure. So I'm hoping that by me sharing this and opening up about my own journey, that you're starting to see that conditions like low back pain are rarely purely about managing physical load. If we were all humanoid robots, maybe that would be true. And maybe one day soon that will be true. Scary thought. But you are a complex, multidimensional being with thoughts, emotions, and a physical body. You're not just the meat suit that you wear. And your brain's protectometer is responding to all of these layers. And that's why as soon as I really began to understand myself in this expanded way and the relationship between the mind and the body, I could never go back to a mainstream model of treating injuries in a traditional physio clinic. You may have heard the saying, know better, do better. When I didn't know better, I didn't know. I'm really sorry and ashamed to say this because this was a very young, inexperienced version of myself, so fresh out of uni and no experience or understanding of the inner workings of a human being other than the anatomical and physiological. Despite being taught at uni about chronic pain processing in the brain, I lacked an experiential knowledge of this truth. And I thought that anyone who had chronic pain was making it up for attention. Gasp. But now I know better, and now I hope I also do better. And the framework of knowledge and skill that really helped me to develop this deeper, more attuned understanding was yoga. So I'm eternally grateful for the teachings of yoga and the transformative power that they've had, not just on my personal life and body, but my professional life too. If you've had any aha moments from today's episode, I'd love to know. Otherwise, I literally have no idea if what I'm sharing is resonating. Send me a DM on Instagram or send me an email. I'd love to start a conversation with you there. And if this episode has spoken to you, please rate this podcast 5 stars and leave a written review. That's the best way that you can support the podcast and help other yoga lovers like you find it. Click the link in the show notes to download a document with today's key takeaway and mantra. In this little doc, you'll find not just today's mantra, but all the mantras from the past episodes. Perfect for your phone wallpaper or your yoga journal. Rewriting them is a powerful way to anchor new beliefs. Here's today's mantra. Despite the pain I feel, my body is safe. I am safe. I thank my nervous system for doing its job properly and remind it that I am okay. I want to leave you with a question to ponder. Should you rest from your yoga practice to help heal your low back pain? We'll explore that in the next episode. Thanks for being here, and I'm so excited to continue this journey with you. Namaste.